All right. Well, welcome to today's presentation. What we're going to talk about today are a couple things that aren't directly related to, say, a safety program, but have a massive impact on performance. If you took our group as a whole, so Aspire, we manage the entire retro program for all the ABC members that are in that program for both Western Washington and Inland Pacific chapters. If you took all of our claims and boiled it down to I don't know, however you define the worst 10%, whether that's high dollar cost, headache, heartache, whatever, the worst of the worst would either tie back, the majority of those would tie back to somebody we should have never brought into our organization, or somebody that was compromised on the job site from either substances or alcohol. So that's why I put these two together. I do have them as standalone presentations, but I combined them for today. But I feel like if our whole group could tighten down our onboarding process and then also make sure we have a comprehensive substance abuse program in place and how to use both of those, that exposure to crappy claims would really drop. And so that's what we're going to talk about here today. So, hiring. I was in the restaurant industry for a number of years, and trust me, I understand that hiring is not the easiest thing. It's easy to talk about and talk about strategies. It's very hard to implement because it's not like going to the grocery store and just picking something up off the shelf that not only has the skill sets you need, but the character qualities that you're looking for. This cartoon really kind of illustrates from my experience when I meet with our members what typically happens, especially as we go into the busy time of the year, and that's why we talk about this in spring. Is what made this guy stand out? Well, he applied. He had a pulse. She could schlep materials from point A to point B. I understand that sometimes the workforce out there that's available is challenging. But what I want to talk about today is essentially do your best practices. Do your best to tighten the filter, so to speak, before bringing someone into your organization. We use the term a lot, don't hire your next claim, your workers' compensation claim. Don't hire your next claim. I've talked to a lot of members that wish they could go back in time. I wish I would have never hired crazy, so to speak. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. If you do your due diligence up front and put in some work up front, it'll pay off on the backside with lower claims and claim costs, but also less headache and heartache. So that's what we're going to briefly go in before we jump into the substance abuse side. And again, for those who just joined us, please, if you have a question, just take your mic off and interrupt me. I don't see hands. All I see is a presentation. Alex will monitor the chat room, but please just chime in if you have a question. I'd be happy to go down answer those questions as we get into it. It starts with your application. I found this in 15 seconds on the internet, but this does nobody any good. Your application should start to weed out for you in the beginning. It should start to detour some of the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, from even applying, so it's not wasting your time. Put on your application that you have a drug policy program that screens randomly, whether you do or not. We'll get into that later. Put on there that you have pre-employment drug screening, that you require entire work history. We'll get into some of this stuff, but make the application start to work for you in the beginning with whatever job search engines you use. I'm not up to date with all the changes there, but Indeed, Monster, whatever job search engines you use, make sure the application is I don't want to say they jump through hoops, but you're gathering information. It's not just, hey, I have a friend or I have a cousin or I have a brother who wants a job. I'll have them come sign up and we'll get them going. Okay, you want to screen a little bit. You want to gather some information before you let somebody into your company. The biggest piece of meat on this bone, information, if you only got one thing out of this, it'd be references versus work history. If I am applying to your company and I give you a list of references, what good is that doing you, the employer? Nothing. They're my references. I picked them. They're going to put me on a pedestal. They're going to make me look good. It could be the pastor from my church. It could be my third grade teacher. It could be my sister-in-law. She has a different last name. You don't know. But I've picked references to provide you that put me on a pedestal. Okay? That does you nothing. The better contacts to check are based off an entire work history. Okay? And I do mean entire work history, all the way back to high school. And it's to the best of their ability. I understand that it's very hard to piece together who's, what's, where's when it goes back a number of years. To the best of your knowledge, please complete a work history all the way back until your education ended. Okay? And it's for a variety of reasons. One, it gives you the better reference to check. Make at least 2 or 3 phone calls to previous employers. Okay? Go off on a little bit of a tangent here, flip the script. If you are getting that phone call, if you receive a phone call from somebody else saying, I have John Doe, Jane Doe here in front of me, what can you tell me about them? Don't throw shade unless you're willing to put them on a pedestal saying, they're fantastic. The only reason they left is because they moved out of town, blah, blah, blah. If you're not willing to shine very positive light on them, basic, I don't know, the basic standard answer would be they worked here from blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah. Would you consider them for rehire? We're not hiring for the position at that time. Trust me, that is professional courtesy. Okay. You're protecting yourself. I have heard stories of attorneys calling, pretending to be an employer, looking for the previous employer to throw shade, and then they go after them with discrimination lawsuits. Okay. Be very careful how you answer those questions. Unless you're willing to be very positive, we are not hiring for the position at this time. Okay. Flip it back to you now. If you are receiving that answer, trust me, that is professional courtesy saying stay away. If they're not willing to give you anything positive, that's okay. That should be a red flag. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but that might be a red flag. So, but make some phone calls. Read between the lines. You might get more than you bargained for. Okay. They might absolutely give you all kinds of details that they maybe shouldn't, but now you have few more pieces to that puzzle. Okay. That's number one. Better contacts to reach out to. Number two, and this was a big one too, look for stability and gaps. Okay, stability. Would you rather have someone that has 10 years of experience in your trade with 1 or 2 employers, or 10 years of experience with 6, 7, 8, 9 employers? Are they jumping ship every 8 months to a year, either because they're wearing out their welcome or they just need a change of scenery? Either way, it takes you a time and resources, energy and efforts to get them up to speed with your culture. And if they're only there for another 6 months after that before they leave, is that worth it? Okay, maybe not, but at least you now have the information. Look for stability. Look for gaps in employment. Okay, you cannot ask the question, hey, have you had a previous workers' compensation claim? That could lead to discrimination. You can ask them to explain gaps in their work history. Hey, I see you worked from 2020 to 2023. You're off from 23 to the beginning of 2025. Can you explain that? Maybe they had an injury. Maybe they were helping a loved one who had a terminal illness. Maybe they were incarcerated. Okay. We'll get into some of that stuff in a second, but at least you now have information. Okay. I am a firm believer in second chances for a lot of this stuff, but gather the information so that you can make a more informative decision before bringing someone into your company. Okay. So look for stability, look for gaps, make those phone calls. And the last thing, and this is more the reactive side of our business, is it may provide us valuable information with regards to claim management. If somebody is in your organization and they have an injury and we come to that crossroads of, wow, we need to offer them permanent light duty because they cannot do their job of injury anymore, but they are a challenging individual and you really don't want them there. If they have a work history that you have on file, some of us here at Aspire can look at that work history, determine whether they have what are called transferable skills, meaning they have skills in another trade, maybe less physically demanding. We can ask a vocational counselor to be assigned to that claim, and that claim can be closed within 3 months. You do not have to bring them on to, permanent light duty. They can be employable due to their transferable skills, and that claim is closed, and we move on. Okay, so hopefully, knock on wood, we're not dealing with that a lot, but it is valuable information to have on the back end of things. But work history, work history, work history. If that is the only thing you got out of today's presentation on hiring practices, please make that a very common practice with your onboarding process. Require work history, make some phone calls, look for stability and gaps. Now you have a lot more information than you may have had previous. Any questions? Okay. Bring them in for an interview. Okay. If you feel like they might be of quality, bring them in for your interview. Ask them about those stability and gaps in their work history. Just see how they answer. Mention a pre-employment drug screen. Do they wiggle in their chair, or they can make eye contact and say, no, we're good? Look for visual cues. Okay. An interview will provide a lot of good information for you just based on not the answers they give you, but how they answer. Okay. You should have a standard set of questions. Some of those might deal with the skill set. You know, you're an electrician, you know, well, electrician's not a good example because they're going to have certifications, but let's just say you're a carpenter. Give them a few scenarios. What can they prove to you through a couple basic questions? They know or have the skills that you need them to have to do the tasks you need them to do. Ask them a few safety related questions. Okay. Don't assume, and this is a little bit of a tangent, don't assume just because they have experience that they came from a company that had a good safety culture. Okay. You're going to set the bar of this is our expectations, but ask them before hiring them how they feel about some of the safety culture stuff that you have. Okay. And again, just look for those visual cues. Have a few questions, 6 to 8 questions, make it quick, but it's worth your time to bring them in and sit them down before you make a decision. Okay. Background checks. This costs, I just checked it this morning, it costs $11. It's through the Washington State Patrol. It's called the WATCH program, Washington Access to Criminal History. It does not take very long, $11. It gives you an entire criminal history. Again, I'm a firm believer in second chances, but know where you're getting. Okay. If they are a hothead and constantly can't get along with other people and you need them to have some customer service skills, depending on the industry that you're in, or at least to be able to get along with coworkers, that might be a challenge. If they're in a van by themselves doing service work, maybe not as big of a deal. Okay. Just again, know what you're getting. Put some pieces of the puzzle together. Okay. You decide what you're willing to accept. Okay. Just because they have a background doesn't mean it's you need to not hire them, but just see what you're getting. Okay. $11 worth the money. I don't have a lot of employers that do pre-employment physicals. I do have a few. But here are the rules behind it. It needs to be a conditional job offer, meaning they checked all the other boxes. You like them from everything else that you've done. You've gone through, you've called references, you brought them in for an interview. They're good. It's a conditional job offer that they do a physical before they are employed. That's fine. It can be position specific. Unlike drug testing, pre-employment drug testing, which we'll get into in a little bit, pre-employment physicals can be position specific. So if you have one position that is physically demanding than more than all others, and you constantly have trends of injuries in that position, you can do a pre-employment physical for that position. Again, as long as it's a conditional job offer, and you have to do it for everybody who applies for that job title. Meaning you can't just discriminate and the guy that looks like he smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, weighs 300 pounds, can barely walk across the parking lot. You can't just do it for him and not do it for somebody who looks like they just came off the football field and they're physically fit. Okay. You have to do it for everybody that applies for that position. A few employers that I work with, and there's a few different ways you can accomplish this. You can have somebody at Aspire, meaning myself, typically write a job analysis for that position, which outlines all the physical demands. The applicant goes into a licensed healthcare professional and says, this is the job I'm applying for. They're asking me to get a physical to make sure I can do these things, and they'll run them through a physical. They can do an old school, very similar to a high school physical. All the basic things that a high school athlete would have to go through to make sure. Or, and again, I have a couple of employers, painting contractors that do this. They set up a mini obstacle course in their shop. Hey, can you carry a 5-gallon bucket of paint 20 feet across the shop floor? Can you climb that extension ladder? Very basic tasks. Yes, there's risk of if the person got injured while doing these tasks of having issues, but I've never heard of it. But the reality is, if you just want to see how someone can carry a bag of tools or climb a ladder, you could do that as well in a pre-employment physical. But just know that it's a conditional job offer. It can be position specific, but you have to do it for all applicants. Any questions there? I-9 versus E-Verify, when you're gathering employment eligibility, the I-9 information, please, I hope all of you use E-Verify. It is free. You get an answer in a few seconds, and it's run by the Department of Homeland Security and the Social Security Administration, so it is accurate. So the information provided by an applicant on an I-9 form is compared to records the DHS and the SSA have. You'll get a response in a few seconds, and it is free. So there is zero reason not to use E-Verify.